In this video, I really want to talk about fishing in windy conditions, super windy conditions. I know that for me, it seems like in the last couple of years, I don't know if this is true, but it just seems like there's been a lot more wind. I don't know that our weather has been a little bit crazy, but even like that's been a lot in the spring, but even in the summer and in the fall and in the winter, you always run into those days where it's just really, really wind. And the wind is going to impact the fishing greatly. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about a few things that you can do to continue to stay on the fish, and also a few things that you need to look out for when it comes to those windy days. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by Gills TV. Gills TV is a content-based website and app that you can download on your phone that its whole purpose is for showing you how to locate fish, how to find bass. And so it's not necessarily me that is teaching you this. It is some of the best anglers in the world. And the best thing is that they are actually doing it. They're not just talking about it. They are out there on the water fishing and showing you exactly their step-by-step process on how to locate bass. Now, right now, up until April 20th, Gills TV is discounted. It is $15.99 a month, but it's going to be $17.99 a month starting April 21st. Also, for the next a little less than a week until April 20th, anyone who signs up for that annual subscription is going to get a $100 coupon to Fin Fishing. So you can pick up some free gear, some sun shirts, some hats, some shorts, whatever it may be. So I'm going to leave some links down below in the description. Shopping or checking out Gills TV, becoming a subscriber. It is the best way to help support this channel. I greatly appreciate it. All right, let's talk about fishing out there in the wind, because we all know wind really impacts the fishermen a little bit more than it impacts the fish. And I've also seen that a lot of times wind is your best friend out there on the water, because it can simply make the fish bite. Now, one of the first things, probably one of the most important things that you can do is before you get to the water is look up how fast the wind is coming and what direction it is coming from, because being able to be efficient in the wind is the hardest thing that you can do. And one of the best things that you can do, look at a map, select an area on the lake where the wind is going to be less impactful, where it's going to be hitting you a little bit less, especially when it's a really, really strong wind. I know that recently, on the Gills TV app, I fished with Edwin Evers, and we fished on this ridiculously windy day, sustained 25 to 30 mile an hour winds with gusts 50 to 70 miles an hour. And the first thing that he did, I remember the night before, he was saying hey, we're gonna fish this creek because it should be a little bit more out of the wind. And he knew that there was plenty of things for him to do in this creek arm. And so that was what his game plan was. We ended up going there. It ended up being really cool because he caught a lot of fish and a lot of big ones. And it was just a really cool deal. But spending a little time before you get in the body of water, I know it sounds simple, and I know it sounds, and it is, but you just have to do it before you get out there to the body of water. Now, the second thing that is really important to understand about when you are fishing in the wind is that and it kind of correlates with what we just talked about, but you may not be able to run around a lot in the wind. You may not be able to go from one creek arm to another creek arm, from one side of the lake to the other side of the lake, especially if it is super windy. And so what I have seen a lot of times to be the best thing to do is to really focus on fishing almost everything that is in those areas that you can fish. And so especially if you start catching fish, so much of the time, what I've realized over the years is that sometimes we feel like bass are on something so super specific where we think, man, the bass are for example, say you go into an area, there's a bunch of docks. Maybe you catch a fish on a dock, but in between those docks, there's some riprap. And maybe in between those docks, there's some laydowns. But we catch a fish on a dock, so what do we start doing? We start skipping over the riprap, we start skipping over the laydowns, and we only fish docks. And maybe we go through an area that has 10 docks on it, we catch 3 fish, we're like, dude, I'm gonna run docks all day long. That's all great and everything. But if you can't run around a lot because of the wind, What you have to do is almost find other little patterns in the area. And so sometimes what's best to do is fish everything in the area where you're getting bit. Don't only just fish those docks, but flip all those laydowns, crank all those banks. You know, do whatever you can to fish an area. This is partly why I think kayak fishermen are so good at times, because kayak anglers are a lot of times restricted to small areas. Like, they have to be a lot better with selecting an area and also efficiently fishing it. Now, a kayak is a lot quieter than a bass boat. It doesn't move quite as much water, but it just seems like if you're in a kayak, there are times where you catch a lot more fish. And I think that the reason because of that too is because you're fishing a little bit of everything. You'll fish the dock, you'll fish that laydown, you'll fish that bank, because you know that once you fish through this area, it might take you 2 hours to get to the next one. So if you are restricted, if the wind is really bad, fish a little bit of everything, because sometimes you will find a number of different patterns. You will find not only our bass on docks, but maybe you'll find that bigger bass are actually on the bank. Maybe they're on those riprap banks. Maybe they're actually bigger bass on the laydowns. Or maybe you'll find different like sets of fish. You'll find that you'll catch a lot of keepers on the riprap, you'll catch a lot of keepers in the laydowns, but every time you catch a big one, it's on a dock. So those are the type of things that you can really dial in when you're restricted on like going to different areas. And that's something that I highly suggest you do when you are fishing in the wind. Really, really big deal. All right, let's talk about the next thing when it comes to windy conditions. Sorry, I'm looking down at my paper here. Oh yeah. If there is wind, there's going to be current of some sort. And this is a really big deal. If there is some sort of wind on your body of water, no matter how small that body of water is, there is going to be fish relating to current. And there's going to be fish that are positioning a little bit different because of the current. Okay, so it's really important when you get out there on the water to pay attention to the flow and what is doing. And a lot of times you can visibly see current. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to pick up on. For example, I fished on a lake a number of years ago. I was throwing a deep diving crankbait, and it was a pretty windy day. But what I actually found out is that I could be sitting in one spot. If I cast the crankbait this way versus casting a crankbait this way, the amount of drag that I felt on my crankbait as I was bringing it in was vastly different. And the reason being was that I was sitting in an area that didn't have a lot of wind, but because of the wind on the main lake, it was causing current to come through that area. And even though I was sitting fairly still, if I cast down from me, I literally could feel a lot more resistance, a lot more drag as I was bringing in that deep diving crankbait. If I cast up, I was not feeling much resistance at all, which basically means that current was going below me, that there was current in the water that I could visibly feel with the crankbait. And so understanding which way that current is flowing can also help you to understand how those bass are positioning on whatever it is that you may have. And what you will typically see is that really active bass position on the front side of current breaks. And really inactive bass, but still catchable bass, tend to position on the backside of a current break. So maybe you have a post in the water, a stump, for example, in the water. I remember fishing the James River down in Virginia, where there's a lot of current because it's a tidal water fishery. And this can happen a lot with wind, but I would catch a ton of fish that absolutely clobbered a chatterbait on the front side of cypress trees, because that water was hitting right where the water splits off. A bass would sit right on that split, and they were always an active fish. They would always hit a chatterbait. On the backside of those stumps, I couldn't catch chatterbait fish, but what I could catch was fish that would eat a Texas rig. So I could flip and pitch that Texas rig in the back and actually catch fish that were inactive, sitting in the current eddy on the backside. So not only does this happen with visible cover that you can see with your own eyes, but it also happens a lot with underwater current. And so underwater current, you really kind of have to just think about in your head how that current is hitting certain objects and how the fish are going to set up on it. For example, sometimes a ledge is a big place that we like to catch bass when there's a lot of current. And again, this current could be generated from anything, but we're talking in this video specifically about the wind. If you have a ledge like this, where the current is hitting up against that ledge, what it does is that current shoots up, it creates an eddy on the very front side of that ledge. So if you've ever been out ledge fishing before and fish are all over, when you have current hitting that ledge all of a sudden, it jumps over and it creates an eddy right here and then continues to go. The fish will stack up right there. And that is where you will catch a lot of fish. So when you have wind, you're going to have current. Make sure you utilize that to understand how those bass are going to be positioned so that you can catch them a little bit better. All right, guys. If you want to check out Gill CV, I'm leaving links down below in the description. Also, I will see you tomorrow.